edition of Strategic Moves with Lou.
Yay!
Yay! My name is Lou, and I'm the broker owner for Strategic. And today we have several guests that are going to be with us over a period of time, since the weather has been kind of ugly out there. We're going to try and do the Zoom thing and have some fun. And so here today we have with us Ben Young with American National Bank.
Yep.
So sorry. Tell us a little bit about your experience. What's your, how long you've been doing loan,
absolutely.
Loan processor, right?
I'm a loan originator.
Loan originator. Yep. So
Mm-hmm.
people come to you to.
So whenever they want to get pre-qualified, want to buy a house, want to look at refinancing, they come to me. We talk through the numbers, make sure it makes sense. They either get them pre-qualified or start their refinance and get the loan going for them. And then we head off to the processor to help get all of the back end stuff going for us. I've actually been
criteria. You have a lot of criteria that you kind of go through with them. I know we talked to a lender the first episode that we did, and it's all based on their credit score. It's based on their debt to income ratio. I mean, obviously, I know that, but our audience may not know all the details on how that works. The credit score is generally about 640. Are we at 640 right now, or are we taking it a little bit?
Each lender has their own options. Usually conventional loans, minimum 620. And then government loans, some of them can go down as low as 580. We go about 620 as well for the lowest score on government loans like FHA and VA loans.
Okay.
But usually if you have the lower credit scores, you'll want another compensating factor, like you have a larger down payment, you have more cash reserves, you're doing a shorter term to offset the lower credit scores. But it's not impossible. It's just matters making it make sense in the full picture for you.
Okay. So, and then that leads into, so for instance, if they do have borderline credit score, they can still get that. Oh, I lost you. I don't know if that was me or you.
I'm coming back. Nope, that was me.
Okay. If they have the borderline credit score, they can still qualify for the lower interest rate, or is that kind of like a sliding scale where the better the credit score, the better the interest rate that they're going to be able to get?
I will say typically it is a sliding scale. The better the credit score, the better interest you can get.
Okay.
Especially if you add in factors like if you want to do a refinance with cash out or you're purchasing an investment property. That's when those credit scores really start to come into play.
Well,
but however, they always play.
You can only purchase with a conventional loan anyway, correct?
Correct. You are correct.
All right. And generally, does American National keep those conventional loans in-house?
Yeah, great question. Conventional loans, we don't keep those in-house. We actually are a service provider for Fannie Mae, so we do service those. So whenever we close a conventional loan, we don't sell it off to another lender. We actually retain that and service that for the life of the loan.
That's a really good option, because a lot of times, if you go to Wells Fargo or Chase or, any of the bigger companies, or even some of the smaller companies, they're automatically going to sell your note, and then you're going to have a different lender. You're going to have, I don't know, Dr. Cooper or Mr. Cooper. That's what it is.
Yeah. That's a bad one.
Yeah, Mr. Cooper, or there's other lenders out there. I can't even think of them right now, but there's so many of them.
That's definitely a huge selling point for us.
Huh?
Definitely a huge selling point for us because our servicing team is actually in our office here in Wichita Falls. So you don't have to call an 800 number when you have a question about your billing or a question about the escrow analysis that are coming out right now. You can just pick up the phone, call our local number, talk to someone in person, and then even come and sit down with them if you wanted to. So definitely a huge selling point for us.
Yeah, that is a good one. And then for, a lot of people nowadays, they like to get on. We're on the age of technology. Everybody gets online. We all shop online. We all do everything online. If I'm interested in anything, I Google it online, and then whatever pops up on my Google list is what I'm going to be clicking on. Well, a lot of people, they do the same thing with loans. They get online and they Google buying a home, and they wind up with this .com lender.
Right.
There's so many of them. Quicken Loans is the one that the quickest one that comes to mind. But they sell you on the interest rate, and the previous lender that we talked to, we basically spoke about the advantages of coming into a branch here in Wichita Falls and talking to a local lender or a local credit agency, credit union or whatever, or something like that. Versus going online and doing it. What is it? What in your experience is that I mean, is that going to be something that we can explain to the audience, I guess, is what's the pros and cons?
Yeah. So the local lenders, whether you want to come in person, whether you want to do everything electronically, I'd say 95% of my borrowers, I don't even see in person. They like to do everything online, like to take care of everything remotely just because they're busy and have a hard time breaking away from their jobs and everything. But we have that option of coming in and meeting with someone in person. So you can sit down and see someone, which is still how I like doing bits. I like to be able to talk to people, meet with people. But a big difference between the local lenders is just simply that we can take a look at it and take a look at what you're doing, look at it objectively, look at the full picture as opposed to just, do you fit in a box for this, this, or this? We can look objectively and see what options can you provide. The biggest thing is local lender is that we can sit there and look at, we have real streamlined closing costs and we have real competitive interest rates as well.
Yeah, and then in my experience, another thing that I find that is more beneficial to do in somebody here and locally is the cost itself too. I mean, the loan origination fee, I know that it can be up to 1% of the sales price, but the loan origination fee here locally tends to be pretty much a reasonable rate between $450 and $600. And if you go to, even USA.com, their loan origination fee, I think is like $1,500 or up to 1% of that loan. And then a lot of the other ones, they'll do even more based on that. So, I mean, if you get using a round number, if you get a $100,000 loan, that's $1,000 that you're going to pay on the origination fee to use somebody that's going to offer you just maybe a tick of a little bit different interest rate.
Yeah. And the funny thing is, when someone tells me, oh, I'm pre-qualified through so-and-so and it's a national lender, I kind of chuckle and I say, well, good, they'll make my job a lot easier then. Because our closing costs are a lot cheaper and typically our interest rates are a lot more competitive as well without having to pay the rate down. And that's something that's a big deal, is whether are you having to pay for the rate that they're offering you, or is that giving it to you without any additional costs?
And that adds to the closing cost, because
absolutely,
if you're paying down points, then yes, you can get a 2% interest rate if you want to, but then when it comes to the closing cost, that closing cost is going to be added in there, and you're going to be paying $1,000 for that additional tick of the interest rate.
So you mentioned the term buying points, and I've had a lot of people say, what does it mean to buy points? Because the average person doesn't understand what that terminology means. And very simply, it's just if we're offering like that 2.875 and you want a 2.5, there's a scale that we can figure out, okay, if you want that big of interest rate drop, you have to pay X amount of dollars to get that rate. And that equates into at closing. So you'd have to pay that much at closing to get that interest rate. And that would be considered so many points in order to get that. Sometimes it's less than a full point.
Usually it's broken down into fractions, right? Like an eighth of a point or half of a quarter of a point or half of a point or something like that.
Right.
And then you guys provide a cost for each one of those little bumps.
Right.
And then another thing is those interest rate points can be included in the closing cost. That somebody might be, like a seller, if they're going to be paying some of the closing costs, if there's any points that they're purchasing, that can also go towards their points, their closing cost requests. I guess I'm getting kind of confused. I'm confusing myself, so I can't imagine that the audience is any less confused. But so whenever you ask for closing costs in a contract, you can include points in those. There's certain things that you cannot include in the closing cost, but points is one of them.
Correct. Yeah, it is. Every loan does have a certain amount that the seller can pay in closing costs, though. So sometimes, depending on what type of loan it is, the seller might be limited 6%. To a certain amount, right? 3% or 6% or different ranges, depending on what type of loan it is.
Conventional is usually 3%, right?
It actually depends on how much you put down. So if you have a larger down payment, the seller can actually pay more than 3%.
Oh, good to know.
So it all depends on the down payment portion.
And your guys' down payment on a standard conventional loan is going to be 5% or
5% is pretty typical. You actually go as low as 3% for a first-time home buyer. So there is a 3% conventional option, but it is for first-time home buyers only. And there's some other programs out there, but the traditional conventional loans is 3% is the minimum. But there is that first-time home ownership, and above after that, it's 5% minimum for everybody else.
And FHA is general. I mean, I've never seen it more than 3.5%, but FHA and
Correct. It's 2.5%.
3.5%. And then for VA, it's nothing. You only have to pay for the VA funding fee, which can be rolled into the sales price.
Right.
Typically.
That's if you're not exempt from the VA funding fee. The VA, there are veterans who are exempt from that funding fee as well.
Even if you have just any disability, it doesn't have to be a certain percentage. It could just be any disability whatsoever.
Yeah, I don't know what the exact amount is, but usually the lender can just order a certificate of eligibility through the VA and just double check it. And the veteran can actually go online and get that themselves to see if they are exempt for sure or not.
Right, right. Well, you have given us tons of information, and I am so glad to meet you. And I know that our audience will probably want to talk to you again at some point. So
absolutely.
But you have been a fount of information, and we so appreciate you being on here with us, Ben, and I hope to see you soon on the flip side. And American National Bank, this is Ben Young. If they need to call you, do you want to give them your number?
Yep, sure. My phone number is 940-235-7836. And welcome Ben. Phone call.
Okay. All right, guys. We're going to go with another, we're going to meet with another guest here shortly. So stay tuned. Welcome back, everybody. We are here with Brooke Williams. She is a strategic realtor. And tell us a little bit about yourself, Brooke. How did you get into real estate?
So my mom's a realtor, and she really encouraged me. And so I was like, sure, I'll give it a try. And
what do you do besides real estate?
I work full time at Clark Eye Care, and I do clinical study coordination. And then outside of that, I spend a lot of time with my family. I'm a mom of 2, and they keep me busy.
Yeah, yeah. Your little girl is the cutest little thing. I just need to like get a little miniature of her and put her in my pocket.
She's sassy. She's so sassy. But she keeps me laughing.
Mm-hmm. So you are a recently new real estate agent. When did you get your license?
So I got my license back in March, right whenever the pandemic hit. So it was kind of a rocky start, an interesting start at least.
But you've done pretty well. I mean, you got for doing it part-time, you've gotten quite a few transactions already done, and you've got pretty good numbers too.
Yeah.
You like, is there any particular area in Wichita Falls that you like to work in, or you're pretty much just anywhere and everywhere?
Anywhere and everywhere. Yeah. Wherever we can get one now, as hot as the market is.
I know, right? We need to move, you know what we need to do? We need to move to Austin.
Yeah.
We totally need to move to Austin. The properties down there, they're selling for over the last one that I just did a contract down there in Austin, and we submitted 4 or 5 offers on different properties and didn't get a single one. We had to go $100,000 above asking price.
That is insane. They must have really liked it, or just needed somewhere to go.
That was the only option. That was the only, I mean, if we didn't go above $100,000 above asking price, they had 20 other offers to go with.
That is crazy.
It was nuts. I mean, the house was already listed for $255,000 anyway. So it wasn't like it was just like a little podunk house or nothing like that. It was already a pretty, decent house, 2,000 square feet, just the standard, nothing special. I think it was even built like in 1996 or something like that. But they wound up having to make an offer of 100 and nothing included, like no survey, no title policy, nothing. I mean, they basically, they're paying their whole entire way plus $100,000. I just couldn't believe it. I was like, are you serious? And it seems like it's trickling up a little bit too. So, I mean, our market here in Wichita Falls has gotten a little bit crazy in the last year and a half, but it hasn't gotten that crazy.
No, that's off the charts.
Yeah, I feel like it's going to trickle up here in Wichita Falls a little bit. I mean, our market is just a little bit, what's the word I'm looking for? A little bit of a closed market, like we don't have big, huge companies like Tesla moving in here. But,
Right.
and that's one of the reasons why there's so many houses that are selling over asking price here in Texas right now, is because there are a lot of companies that are coming over here. But what do you see on the market right now as far as?
Well, I currently have some buyers. They're $250,000-$300,000 price range, and we will have showings scheduled. It would have gone on the market, and we have a showing scheduled the same day, and it's sold before we can even get in to view it. So we're having so much trouble just even getting in to see things before they go into contract.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what I'm seeing here in Wichita Falls too. I mean, and to an extent, I think that we need to start actually, when we start getting more listings, is we need to tell our buyers, our sellers, don't just accept the first offer that comes along, because
Right.
if you just wait a minute, you may get an offer that's $20,000 or $30,000 above asking price, or you're leaving money on the table by just taking the first thing that comes along.
That's exactly what my buyers are thinking. They're just like, we don't even have a chance to offer them more because they're accepting so quickly.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I wonder if they're accepting so quickly at a higher rate, or if it's, I don't know. I guess we'd have to look and kind of study it a little bit and see what they're closing, like what's closing right now. Yeah. But that's what they're doing down in Austin. They actually don't accept any offers, or they don't. Basically, whenever I was doing the offers down there, they give you a cutoff time. So like the seller will actually say, we're not going to review any offers until Friday, a week after we listed it, so that they get 20 or 30 offers to look at. And yeah, it's happening. I mean, these agents, I called them up and I'm like, so where are we at? Like, what's the number at now? And I mean, obviously they can't tell us exactly what to offer, but they can give us a ballpark. And I mean, the ballpark is like, whew, way up there. And they're like, oh, well, let me check my Excel spreadsheet. And I'm just like,
they're having to get organized.
Yeah, they have them on an Excel spreadsheet. That's how many offers they're getting. They can't, I mean, it's mind blowing to me. But, so, I mean, when it comes to selling properties, I think that's what we need to start doing with all these new properties that we're going to be listing, is saying to our sellers, leave it on the market for a week, because you never know. Somebody might come in and give you $20,000 above asking price. And, yeah, I mean, if you take the first thing that comes on the market, I mean, the first thing that comes along your path, then you might be missing out on some decent cash. They're doing waivers right now down there in Austin, which to me is very dangerous. They're doing appraisal waivers is what that's called. So basically, yeah. So when an FHA, if they're approved for an FHA loan, they make an offer $40,000 or $50,000 above asking price. If they don't take that, if the house doesn't appraise for that amount, then the sellers are not going to reduce the sales price.
Right.
So they have to come out of pocket for the difference. They have to, I mean, let's say, whole numbers, it's a $250,000 house. They make an offer for $300,000 and it only comes in at $280,000. They got to come in with $20,000 at closing, because the seller's not going to waive the appraisal. It's crazy. Yeah. It's crazy. All right, lady. Well, I thank you for joining us, and hopefully we can see you some more, and you can come and talk to us about the new stuff that you might be learning about, as far as like getting that big, huge listing. We need those big, huge listings, right? You need to,
I know.
get so many listings right now. We need listings. So if you want to sell your house, call Brooke. She can sell it. We have so many buyers in the pipeline right now. We need to sell some more properties. We need your listings. So you want to tell them your phone number so that they can get in touch with you?
Sure. 940-224-6325.
Fantastic, lady. Welcome back to Strategic Moves with Lou. We here have a guest with, his name is Gabe, and he's with Premier Choice Inspectors, and he's going to tell us a little bit about himself.
Hello, how are you?
I'm good. I'm good. This weather.
Yeah, so we do home inspections, and basically what we do is we go into a house, and our job is to disclose all the defects in the home that we can find. Our job is not to do a code inspection. We do that, but that is new construction only. As far as a pre-existing home, we're trying to keep the house up to a modern standard. And so we'll go in there. We may talk about some cosmetic things. Usually the biggest thing we're looking at in these houses is a foundation. So 85% of what we do in a house relates back to a foundation.
You get to crawl in the muck, huh?
Yes. And
those lovely beams.
That's probably the biggest problem we see in houses. Luckily, and it sounds bad, but luckily we had a drought a while back, and then we dealt with most of these houses. And so when we had our drought and then it started raining, a lot of foundations moved. We had a lot of foundations repaired, and now we're just trying to maintain those foundations, just trying to make sure the houses are in good shape. We know that most homes are going to outlast the owners. And so we just want to make sure that these houses continue to move forward, time and progress, and stay safe. A lot of what we're doing is disclosing defects. Our job is basically to go in there and just talk about the bad. We don't talk about the good stuff in homes, although sometimes we may tell you this has been upgraded. Our job is just really tell you what's actually happening with the house. A lot of buyers go into a home and they look at it, they're emotionally charged. They may not realize that there's a large crack in the wall, or they may not realize that you have older wiring. So a lot of what we're doing is talking about that stuff.
And a lot of electrical issues wind up being mainly because it's the older the older knob and tube and Federal Pacific?
Yes, Federal Pacific panels. Older knob and tube wiring, that's not preferred by anybody. Ideally, we don't tell you ever to really rewire a house unless that wiring has been damaged. But we do tell you, as you upgrade the home, start removing that. Have an electrician come in here and start removing it. If you open a wall cavity, you shouldn't be leaving old knob and tube wiring in there. Federal Pacific panels, basically most organizations are starting to require those to be deleted and removed. So you have first-time home buyers that they don't want it anymore. And our job is to go in there and point them out.
It's an obsolete system anyway. Right now, you can't even, if there's an issue with the Federal Pacific breaker, you can't even get a replacement for it without it costing, a pretty penny.
A ton of money, yes. And that's something else we see is those Federal Pacific panels in conjunction with old knob and tube wiring, they're not really safe at all. But if they have some newer wiring on them, a lot of times they'll run properly. But the problem comes when you start having to replace breakers. So you have to replace one breaker, it's $90. If you have to replace 4, that's $400. A modern breaker will cost you somewhere between $4 to $30. That's a huge price difference. Yeah. Also, in modern panels, we have a lot more room. We can break up the circuitry in the house and we can make that panel run cooler, which is great because wiring is encapsulated within the wall cavities, it's buried in insulation. Sometimes it has stuff packed on top of it. We want that stuff running cooler anyways. And we were not to mention it just lets you run more devices.
We were talking also about the city assistance program and how that can assist people with older homes that might need a little bit of TLC or whatever. The city assistance program can help a home owner. It can help a home buyer when they're actually purchasing the property, but it can actually help a homeowner upgrade those systems with the city assistance program for no cost, correct?
Yes. And probably the biggest thing, and my interaction with them, although I know people who have dealt with them, I've dealt with them some in the past few years, The biggest thing is what they're trying to do is they're trying to get rid of the Federal Pacific wiring or Federal Pacific panel, the knob and tube wiring. They're trying to make these houses safer. You do have to be low income, and the house does actually have to be purchased. So it's not an owner finance situation, but if you are borrowing money from a bank,
do they have to have an
Yeah.
FHA loan maybe?
maybe if you're borrowing money from a bank, a lot of times they're going to go ahead and help. You do have to meet the financial requirements that they have. But basically, if you have a heating and air conditioning system that's installed in the house and it breaks and you don't have the financial resources to repair it, they will help you get it repaired or replaced. If your roof is bad and you need to replace it, they can help with that. It is a grant-based system. So when the money is gone, it's gone. It gets renewed every year, but with speaking to them,
their rules change regularly. So you have to go onto the website, the Wichita Falls City website, I believe, and you can do a search for the City Assistance Program, and you can find out what the requirements are and how to apply. Because a lot of times those things they do run out. I mean, once the budget at the beginning of the budget, they'll have tons of money and they'll be able to help out as many people as apply. But eventually that does run out and you have to wait for the new cycle if they don't have the funds for it. Or they'll change that if they're starting to run out of money, they'll also change what they can do. So
yes.
And at the beginning of the budget is going to give you more benefits.
Yes. And
there's
it is a standard comment. When we do first time home buyer houses in the city limits of Wichita Falls, and we know that area may be generally,
that's another thing. That's another requirement, that it has to be in the city limits. It can't be Canal Park or Burkburnett or anything like that. It only can be Wichita Falls City.
It is a city ran program. So when we do like houses in the avenues, I grew up in the avenues. I kind of know, the financial dynamics of people in the avenues. Anytime we do houses in the avenues, anytime we do anything that is a first time home buyer's property, basically it's a standard comment that we put in there, and it gives them the phone number to be able to contact the city of Wichita Falls. And it tells them, after 12 months, reach out to these people because we want you upgrading the houses. We want everybody to be able to buy a house, but we also know maintaining a house is really expensive. Mm-hmm. And if there's programs out there to help people, that's huge. It's a big plus. We can get these houses more modernized and doesn't cause such a financial strain on the person. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then hopefully in 6-7 years after you're done with the house and you go to sell it, we no longer have to talk about a Federal Pacific panel. We no longer have to talk about knob and tube wiring because that stuff has been upgraded. Mm-hmm. A lot of what we're doing is
like hot water heaters. Yeah, they'll do more than just the roof and the AC unit and the electrical. They'll also take care of hot water heaters. I'm not too sure about the plumbing, if they'll upgrade your plumbing for you. I guess
what they're trying to do is they're trying to get it more modern. And then the assistance for like water heaters is if your water heater fails and you can't replace it, they'll come in there and help you. So it isn't something to just say, we're going to upgrade everything. Some components of the house they will just do. Other things they just have to kind of fail in order for them to help. It's more like an emergency relief. And so a lot of what we're doing is disclosing, hey, your water heater's 20 years old. Be aware it's time to start putting back some money. And then also for people with lower income, we're giving them the number so that if something happens, maybe they did replace the water heater, but they need to upgrade the electrical system as well. They have more resources available to them.
So whenever, goodness, I already forgot what I was going to ask, but whenever you do an inspection, do you get a lot of pre-inspections? Do you talk to owners before they even purchase? Before they even talk to a real estate agent to get it on the market? You offer services?
So we offer pre-inspections. We used to do quite a bit of them down in Dallas. Stopped going to Dallas so much. Just that's not a good drive to do and then try to squeeze houses in. Pre-inspections aren't that huge in Wichita where we do them. We do go and put yard signs up. We do push them on the Facebook page. A lot of times a pre-inspection is going to help a house. Everybody is really prideful of their home.
Mm-hmm.
That's their baby. They usually have a lot of time and money invested in it. A pre-inspection, we're just going to be talking bad about what we see. Although we may talk about some of the upgrades, our job is not to talk about the pluses. It's only to talk about the defects. But pre-inspections typically will help the house sell. It will definitely help it get through the actual closing process a little bit quicker. Because if the house is pre-inspected, basically if the foundation needs to be looked at, you're going to know before you list that house.
Right.
If you have leaks, you're going to know before you list that house.
Mm-hmm.
If your roof needs to be replaced, you'll know ahead of time. The last thing you actually want is you don't want to be listing the house in a market like this. 3 hours later, you're in contract. An inspector shows up 3 days later and tells you the foundation's messed up, or they're not actually going to tell you, they're going to tell the buyer, and you don't want your buyer walking over something that you could have addressed.
Right.
And
a lot of times it'll also highlight things that maybe homeowners thought that was going to be a big ticket item, but meanwhile they find out that it's something simple that they can just, fix beforehand and maximize the amount that they can list it for, and in the beginning, so that they can not be leaving money on the table. I mean, obviously there are some houses that are, not going to finance for an FHA loan or a VA loan, and they're only going to qualify for a conventional loan. So a lot of times homeowners won't even try to do a home inspection beforehand. But even those properties, sometimes it's a good idea, because then you can present the issues to a potential buyer without them having to think, oh, well, there's going to be some issues behind the scenes that we don't see. So I mean, it can help them know what the problems are, and possibly decide if they want to add those, fix those issues, be able to sell it for more. So, I mean, basically and then whenever you get an inspection like that and you do a pre-inspection, do you discount if they have to come and do another inspection? For instance, if they have a buyer and they're looking at your inspection and they want to come and do another inspection, do you offer any incentives for that new buyer to use your services, or is it just another inspection?
So here's how it works. If we go and inspect a property as a pre-inspection, we're going to spend time with the seller. We're going to talk to them about issues that they should resolve before the house hits the market. So if we find termites or something, we're going to tell you, hey, get this dealt with. If you have wood rot, get that dealt with. If we have to go back, typically if you get a house pre-inspected and that house is addressed correctly after the pre-inspection, in a market like this, it's not going to get another inspection. It may be in the buyer's best interest, but if that report's sitting on the coffee table and you have 6 people showing it,
and they have the receipts for the repairs that were addressing whatever issues were in the inspection, I mean, that is the point.
Yeah, and this house has only been on the market for 3 days or 4 days. Typically, they're not going to get another inspection, but at least everything is kind of disclosed. It's up front. I know in the past we've had some times where houses kind of sit. So sometimes we do get called back to those houses to do other inspections. And how we typically work that is I do all the pre-inspections. If we have to go back and do another inspection, we're going to send a different inspector out there. That way it's a fresh set of eyes and there's no looking at reports. So it's just, you go in this thing, it's a brand new house every single time.
Yeah, it kind of breaks up the I don't want to say it's ethics, but it would conflict. It would,
Yes.
So it would dispel any conflict of interest.
Yes. And I know in the past we've had houses where maybe the market wasn't moving as fast as it is now. And you go to a house and you look at this thing over over a year, 3 or 4 times, you'll actually be able to look at some of these reports and see it may be the same thing, but nothing's ever written the same way. Pictures are taken from different angles.
The damage might be more extensive at that point too.
Yeah. The biggest thing on the pre-inspection is it will help a good house sell. It will help it pull more money as long as you're willing to do the work that needs to be done. If we're pointing out wood rot or broken rafters, or that this thing needs some foundation work, if you take care of that before the market hits, or before the house hits the market, it's going to sell better.
Mhm.
It also tells your buyers that you actually care about the house.
Right.
Where the inspector is just another structure. You as an owner doing a pre-inspection and addressing issues, the next owner knows that the house has been cared for. And that's worth a lot.
Yeah.
So.
And I mean, is there anything that you see regularly is there like a most common issue that you find in a lot of this? I mean, I know it's going to be age related. So is there one particular thing that when you walk into a house, you see all the time?
So we're talking about pier and beam houses. Most people are worried about the slope floors. Slope floors in a pier and beam structure aren't really that significant to us. We're more concerned with the piers underneath the structure and the exterior foundation walls. We know that pier and beam structures are older, so chances are they've had a lot of water underneath them from plumbing leaks, and the soil would have expanded and created some of the sloping. Now, with that being said, there are times where those foundations still have to be addressed. Next also goes with older houses as well, and that's the Federal Pacific panels and the knob and tube wiring. One is your insurance is almost always going to ask about knob and tube wiring, and you need to know that the Federal Pacific panels, you just need to be aware that it exists. We do infrared imaging to make sure that the panel is not overheating and there's no hot spots in the panel. If we do find hot spots, we go back through the house to find those hot spots in the walls to find maybe where that loose connection is.
Because that's
typically it.
With the problem as far as like fire, possibility of fire hazards.
Yes. If we're talking about Burt Burnett, a lot of those roofs have to get looked at, but Burt gets weather, and typically sellers are going to be able to get those roofs fixed for pretty cheap, as long as you had insurance.
Mm-hmm.
And then once we get to like out in the boondocks, it's just a whole wide variety of stuff. But typically we want to make sure those foundations are good, the roofs are good, and those electrical systems are good. You get out in the country, you'll run into PVC plumbing. We really like copper, and we really like PEX. PVC is okay for drains. We see it in the supply lines. It's okay. You just have to be careful around it.
It doesn't tend to be a little bit more brittle over time?
Yes, it gets brittle. There is one type, it actually looks like PEX, but it's gray. And it's not approved anymore for residential use at all. But if we see it, we do call it out, and we tell you, hey, we need to replace this pretty soon.
The other one that's very old, I can't think of it right now, but it's
like polybutanol or something like that. And basically what it is the hot water line. Since we have chlorine in our water, it makes that pipe more brittle. And so basically you can just bump it and it'll break. We don't see a whole lot of it. A lot of people use it in old manufactured houses, but most of that has already failed. So since most of it's already failed, a lot of it's already gone. But we do want to disclose the home to you. Our job isn't actually to talk about the good stuff. We don't sell the house. For inspectors, we're supposed to be looking at this as we don't care if the house sells or not. It's just another building. But we want to make sure that people know what they're buying. Yeah, we want to make sure that people know what they're buying. And we want to make sure that when you get here, although home ownership isn't always smooth and easy, that hopefully you get in a house and it's nice, and you just get to enjoy it. In fact, this house I'm in, we just bought it, but we're redoing it, and we're finding all kinds of fun stuff. But my first house I bought was a real turd. I had it for several years, and I bought it when I was 18. Listened to people that I shouldn't have listened to on it, and it ended up being a horrible house. My second house was better. My third house was great, and this house is pretty good right now. It'll be wonderful by the time I'm done with it. But
So you were a real estate agent?
No.
Or you've always been an inspector?
No. So I did maintenance. I did construction and remodeling. I did home inspections for people I knew, just kind of on the side. And then whenever I got my license, I realized, I didn't really know what I was talking about. I could fix it. But I didn't really know what I was talking about. Then we get the license and we get in the whole legal end of it. It's completely different. And you start making these reports and knowing how to actually disclose things completely changes it. And now we've been doing this for a little over 5 years with Premier Choice. Like last year, we got to help like 500 different families find houses, which was great. And a lot of times I see people in the store and they tell me of the things that they're addressing and how they're getting rid of some of the bad things that were done in houses. Typically, as long as you're aware of it, you'll be able to deal with it. It's the surprises that are no good. And we're not fortune tellers. Yeah, we're not fortune tellers, and we can't see through walls. But if we see a previous repair in a wall and we know there's plumbing there, we can tell you, hey, there's a patch here. Just be aware of it. And then in weather like this, if suddenly you see water spewing out of that patch, there was probably a busted pipe there that got fixed and busted again.
Right. And that's the thing, is that home, unless it's a brand new home, they have a life of their own. So, I mean,
yes.
Especially the older homes, they wind up having a lot of cast iron pipes. That's what I was thinking of.
Cast iron. Yeah, cast iron has a lifespan of 70 to 100 years.
Galvanized, that's the word. Galvanized.
And galvanized is no longer for water supply lines because it rusts. So if you're turning on your faucet after you left from vacation and it looks like brown water coming out, you typically have galvanized plumbing in the wall. Eventually it will clog up and it will stop working. But if you're aware of it, it's different than being surprised by it.
Well, I appreciate you joining us, Gabe. And you gave us a lot of information for us to digest. And I'm hoping that this will help other people make the right, make an informed decision on purchasing a property and getting that, or if they're listing a property, to get that pre-inspection done so that they can be prepared for any issues that come up with the process. And I'm sure that we have much, much more that we could talk about, and I'm sure that you'll join us again at some future date. And I appreciate you coming and talking to me. I know it's getting kind of late.
Yeah, and I will. And we also put videos up on Facebook. As we find things in this house, we'll be putting more videos up of things people can actually do.
And you want to let everybody know how they can get in touch with you?
Yeah, you can actually look us up on Facebook. You can call me directly. You can call the office number. The office is 940-704-2647. My cell is 940-782-2407. And they can always call. You don't even have to use us to do the inspection. If you run into a problem, you can always call. We'll still walk you through it. What I tell people is we're not a warranty service. We don't fix anything anymore. But we will walk you through this stuff. And a lot of times it's just having somebody that can tell you, hey, watch this video so that you understand what you need to do. Information
is power. But anyway, hope you guys have a great evening. And
all right, you too. Stay warm.
Yeah.
All right.
And subscribe, like, and share.